Before start making changes in our application, it is better to install one UI framework to give our application a good look and feel. Bootstrap being the most popular one, I will cover that first, and in this video I will cover 2 ways to install Bootstrap in your application. I will also have a separate video on how to install Angular material in your application in case anyone prefers the material UI more than the Bootstrap. Let's get started. This is part of the video series Angular course. If you have not watched the earlier videos, you can go through them for a better understanding. Now, in order to use the Bootstrap feature, what library actually we are going to install? If you search with Bootstrap, this is the first link that you are going to get, and if you hit that, then you will land up the official website of Bootstrap. But the library that Bootstrap provides is for jQuery and JavaScript websites. It's not for Angular, but jQuery is not at all recommended to be used in Angular applications. Why? Because jQuery has its own event listeners that conflicts with the Angular change detection mechanism or its listeners. So it is not at all recommended to jQuery in your application, and so also the libraries which are dependent on jQuery. However, the good news is that few developers has ported the Bootstrap framework into our Angular, and we have 2 options to choose from. One is the ng-bootstrap and the other is the ngx-bootstrap. So the summary is, the official Bootstrap library is for JavaScript or jQuery website and is not recommended to be used in Angular. The next options that we have is the ng-bootstrap and ngx-bootstrap. Both of these libraries have their pros and cons, and you can search the internet to get a better idea about them. But in this video, I will show you how to install the ng-bootstrap in your application. You are still free to choose the ngx-bootstrap. Let's see how we can install the ng-bootstrap library. For that, we will search with ng-bootstrap, and as you can see, the first link refers to a GitHub library. We will click onto that, and on the very first page we have the command through which we can install the ng-bootstrap library. Let's copy this command and go to our VS Code IDE. We are in our VS Code. If you can't see the terminal window here, then you probably need to go to the terminal tab and then click on new terminal. Also, when you are at the terminal window, please make sure that you are using CMD and not the PowerShell, otherwise this command might not work. So if you are not at CMD, please type in CMD and hit enter. And also make sure that in the terminal your location is pointing to the root folder of our project. If those are confirmed, then just paste in the command that we have copied from the site and hit enter. It is prompting us by asking that whether we would like to proceed or no. I will go with yes, and that will start installation of that package. ng-bootstrap is installed, and as you can see, there are 3 changes in the package.json. So basically 3 dependencies got installed. The library we wanted was the ng-bootstrap, but since Bootstrap and the Angular localize are the dependencies of this library, this also got installed automatically using the ng-add command. Apart from that, we also have a change under our app.module file where they have added an entry under the imports ngb module. As I mentioned earlier, if we want to use any module in our application, we have to include that module under the imports array of our app module. So that is also automatically done. And finally, under the styles.css, there is also an entry which is importing the styles of the Bootstrap library. So all these changes were automatically done using the ng-add command. Let me quickly go back to our Explorer view again, and let me open the app component HTML file. I will remove everything and I'll try to see if the Bootstrap is properly installed or not. I will use a button, and I will give it a class btn primary. Now these 2 classes comes from the Bootstrap library, and if Bootstrap is properly installed in our application, we see a button which looks like a Bootstrap button. Let me go ahead and start our application using ng-serve. And soon enough our application is up. Let me go to the browser and check it. And as you can see, we have a button which is styled according to Bootstrap style specification, and if we inspect this button, we'll see that the style is coming from the button.css, which comes under the Bootstrap. So congratulations, you have successfully installed the Bootstrap in your application. A few things to mention about the installation process that we have just saw. This installation process only works in Angular 9 onwards. The ng-add command does not work on the Angular version which is older than Angular 9. Next thing is, this is an automatic process, which means you don't have to do much. All the things are done and taken care of by the Angular CLI. Hence it is the recommended way and is very easy to use. Lastly, this process is performed by Angular CLI, as ng is the command which is facilitated by Angular CLI and not the node package manager. These are the good things about it, but there is also an alternative way to install it. If you go back to the website of ng-bootstrap, you will see after scrolling a bit there is a get started now button. If we hit that button and scroll down a little bit, the installation process still suggests to use the ng-add, but here they have also mentioned that if you have an Angular version greater than 9 CLI, then only you can use this method. Otherwise, there is an alternative method or the manual installation which is implemented using the npm-install or the node package manager install. Now, why you need to know this method? Because all the libraries that you see in the internet do not give you an option of ng-add. However, if you have an option of ng-add, always prefer that, but most of the libraries still do not support ng-add, so might be you need a manual installation. Let's see how we can manually install the ng-bootstrap as well. But if your purpose is to only install the bootstrap and get started, you don't have to do anything, but I still want you to be familiarized with this method. Let me first stop the application, and that you can do by hitting the Ctrl+C button in your terminal and then pressing Y and then enter. So our application is stopped, and now we want to first uninstall the ng-bootstrap that is already installed in our previous step. So let me do npm-install. We have to uninstall all the libraries that got automatically installed using the ng-add, because sadly we don't have any ng-remove or ng-delete method till yet, and we have to go by the npm-uninstall to remove any package or remove any dependency from our project. So there are 3 libraries that got installed, so I am going to remove them one by one. And finally, I'm going to uninstall the bootstrap library. There was a typo. I'm going to correct that. Now that we have got rid of the libraries that got installed, I will also revert the changes that were made on these files. Now our application is back to the state from where we started. Let's have a look on the manual installation process now. What it says, if you prefer not to use the schematics, the schematic is the process which is implemented in Angular 9 onwards, and it lets you put additional steps in your installation. Normally npm installation just downloads the library and add an entry in the package.json. It doesn't do anything else, but ng-add does many additional steps. As you saw that it also added the module in our app module, and it also added certain css entry in our styles.scss file. Now those are the things that we have to manually do if we do it by the npm install. First step will be to install all the 3 libraries that this library is dependent on. First one will be bootstrap. Again, we have to make sure that we are operating on cmd and we are at our root location of our project. So npm-install bootstrap, that will be the first library over which everything is dependent on. So let me first install the bootstrap. Once that is done, I'm going to install the actual library. Again, the same step, then npm-install. Whenever a website mentions that install this library, they are basically saying you have to use npm-install and then the library name. And finally, we have to install the @angular localize. How this little command installs the library, because npm.js or node.js maintains a repository of all the libraries that are exposed by the developer or the developer community. by the unique name, it searches that dependency and install the latest version of the dependency. If you want to install a certain version of a dependency, you also have to mention the version number using the @ followed by the dependency name. Now once these 3 libraries are downloaded and installed in our application, what we are going to do, we are going to follow the next steps. The next step is you have to also include the styles to your project. What this basically means, it means that whatever got downloaded under your node modules folder, which is up here, so this node modules folder contains all of your dependencies, and with no surprise it will also hold the bootstrap and ng-bootstrap dependency. If you expand it and search by the alphabetical order, under the B you will find bootstrap, and inside bootstrap you have a SCSS folder which holds all the style sheet or all the style files. These are the styles that you have to include in your project. And where to do that? Let me import the bootstrap style sheet into our styles.scss file. Now this is the global style sheet file for our application, and we can import any third-party files or any third-party style sheet into this file, and in that case our application will also be able to access those style sheets. For that we will use import URL option, and here within the quotation we have to provide the path of the style sheet that we want to import. Now that will precede with a tilde sign. Now basically this tilde means you are referring to your node modules folder where all of your dependencies reside. So we have the bootstrap folder under the node modules, and hence we are starting the URL with the tilde, then bootstrap, the name of the folder under which the style sheet exists, which is bootstrap, and then we have the SCSS folder, finally bootstrap.scss. We'll save it. You can check if the URL is correct by pressing Ctrl and then clicking on this URL. If you get this file, then the path is correct. In the final step, we have to go to our app module and include the ng module. You can see our VS Code is suggesting us to import ngb module as the first option in the drop down, and we will go ahead and hit enter. That will do 2 things. It will include the ngb module here under the imports array, and also it will bring the path of the ngb module. Our VS Code is intelligent enough to find the ng-bootstrap in our node modules and import the path of ng modules here. And that is it. You are ready to use your bootstrap in your application using the manual process as well. One last thing that I would like to mention is, apart from importing the ngb module, which do not import any other modules into your project, you also have to include any specific module which is specific to a feature. For example, you want to use the pagination function of a bootstrap, then you also have to import the ngb pagination module. So they have broken the features of bootstrap into different modules, and any feature that you wish to use in your application, you have to import the corresponding module as well. Now, as obviously this method is not recommended and is a little bit hectic to do. Now the good side is this method still applies to all the Angular version. Even you can use this method before Angular 9. This is a manual process obviously, and it is managed by the node package manager and not the Angular CLI. Through this method you can download most of the libraries which are available in npm.js. That's it for now. If you have any question, please drop them in the comment section, and also subscribe to my channel so that whenever a new video is uploaded you get a notification, and I will see you in the next one.